Okay. So, the last video I made on this topic, I was introducing that I would be doing this and why it matters. But this time I want to go more in depth about why ASD matters, why you should care, and what the actual problem is. Because ASD, which stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder, it's more complex than just, oh, it's the problem. In fact, being autistic is not the problem. It's not like ADHD that you have to learn to control. In fact, in many cases, autism is actually an asset. But if this is the case, why do I need to make such a video? Because there very much is a problem for everyone on the spectrum that it causes some serious problems, which is why I need to make a disclaimer. This video is not for young ears or soft hearts. I will be talking about some serious topics such as alienation, discrimination, dehumanization, and to an extent, even suicide. Which I know very well this video could get demonetized. I'm going to try to fight this as best I can, because I don't feel like people under 18 are likely to understand it anyways. I mean, you could. Okay, I'm not saying everyone under 18 won't understand this, but because the ones that can really do something and will really understand what I'm talking about will be over 18. If it was up to me, I would set it for 16 and up, but it's not up to me. I don't think this is a video for young kids, and if your parents are letting you watch this, ask them to rewatch the disclaimer, because it's not for little kids. It's a serious issue that needs to be addressed. That being said, let's get into the topic of the video. So, what is the exact reason ASD is hard to live with? It's actually people. Now, let me explain. So, the stereotypes that have formed around ASD, and understand this, when I was really young, when I was in elementary school, people were just starting to learn about ASD. It wasn't very well known and even more misunderstood. But it's still a problem, a big problem, because of these stereotypes. I will be concentrating on debunking what the stereotypes I even know of to my personal experience find to be the most important to debunk. Will I hit every single one I find important? No, of course not, because to do that and also to share my own experiences, that would make, a 45-minute video, not including the disclaimer and introduction and everything else. And once the video gets long enough, people aren't going to watch. I need people to watch my video. So, let's start with the stereotypes. One of the ones I've noticed causes the most struggle, or at least that I had the most problems with. For you see, I am an extrovert. I am not an introvert. I need other people. This one has caused me a great deal of suffering. There's a couple like this, actually, which let's just start with both of them. So, autistic people don't want friends, and autistic people don't have emotions. So, autistic people don't want friends. No. No, that is not true. That's basically saying you're not human if you're autistic. I believe even introverts want friends to a point. They just aren't as great with social interaction. Where does this stereotype come from? It actually comes from how people treat those on the spectrum, which directly relates to the other stereotype I mentioned. People with autism don't show emotion. Yes, that's true to a degree. ASD makes you show emotions in a different way, but it doesn't mean you don't have emotions. My channel proves this because I am autistic. I have high-functioning autism. And what this stereotype does is it makes people think if you're autistic, you can't really show emotions. You can't feel emotions. So, you must not be a very social person. I'm going to ignore you. Or I'm going to treat you horribly because you can't feel negative emotions. Basically, what this does is dehumanize us to the point where we aren't human anymore. Once this happens, you have basically turned us into a machine, a robot, artificial intelligence, whatever you want to call it. You have turned us into inanimate objects. Just objects. That's what it means to not have emotions. To be an object, not a person. If you are a human being that doesn't have emotions, guess what? You're not a living thing. You're dead. That's the only way the body can't feel emotions. But the consciousness still would. So that needs to be addressed. And now, how does this cause the stereotype that people with autism or autistic people, people on the spectrum, there's many names for it, don't want friends? Well, people get treated so horribly as a result of these stereotypes, they start to not so much not want friends, but fear making friends. Which, because you become afraid to make friends, and people don't understand you, people think you don't want friends, you don't have emotions, all of this, you get alienated. It dehumanizes you into a machine and alienates you. That's what the combination of these two stereotypes does. And this can lead to so many problems. This can lead to chronic depression. It does lead to alienation. It is dehumanizing, and every single one of these stereotypes in some way is discrimination. Even if you don't realize you're causing problems, it doesn't change that you are. And because of these problems, even I was not a very social person at first. I always had my barrier up in elementary school. I never really came out of my shell. And my bad history of teachers doesn't help. But not all my teachers were bad. Some of them were amazing. But some of them were pretty awful. And it got to the point where I always kept my shield up. I didn't understand everyone else, why they were treating me this way. I mean, I was like 9, 10 when I first started to notice. I was that young. And yeah, I know I can't be the only person like this. When I really came out of my shell wasn't until 8th grade. Okay? I was already doing algebra and geometry, learning about atomic physics. I was already doing this kind of thing before I was willing to come out of my shell. And what caused me to always have my guard up? What caused me to always have my shield up? The misconceptions of autism. So these two things are such an enormous issue, they cannot be left alone. Prevalence. Prevalence is a good thing to cover. Statistics from the CDC. Okay, the CDC, that's my source. I will link the CDC official website soon after this is uploaded. I don't know exactly when, but I will link it as it is a big source. But there's no way to know whether this is just because more people are being discovered to have autism or it's becoming more prevalent. But whichever way, it does not matter. Not that long ago, I can't remember the exact time, but only a few years ago, 1 in 150 were confirmed to have autism. 1 in 150 were confirmed to be on the spectrum. The most recent statistic I've seen from the CDC estimates it now to be 1 in 54. 1 in 54 people in the nation, maybe even worldwide, who knows, are estimated to be on the spectrum. Which, this isn't a huge percentage. I calculated the numbers once. I believe it was like, if I'm remembering this correctly, it was like 1.8%. But 1.8% out of billions. That adds up to a few million people. Several million people have autism. Several million people are on the spectrum. Several million people are autistic. However you want to say it, it doesn't matter. That is prevalent. And as time goes on, it only becomes more prevalent. Or maybe not prevalent, but discovered at the very least. And whatever the case, this shows that so many people already have it, and so many more people are bound to have it. So you can't just ignore it because it's a minority group. It is still a large number of people. It's still a large number of people that are being dehumanized, that are being discriminated against, that are being alienated, and in some cases even killing themselves. And I would go as far to say just raising awareness about the real issues of autism is a real Martin Luther King move. If you don't know who Martin Luther King is, then you haven't learned about him in school yet, and you're probably a little young to understand this video. Not because of it, but most of the time that would be the case. And again, if you are below 16, you should not be watching this without a parent or guardian. There are other stereotypes I want to cover, one of which affects more than just those on the spectrum. Their parents. You figure, for the most part, for every one person affected directly by these stereotypes, for every person who's autistic, they have two parents. You can figure that's how it is for most people. And when you calculate that, you get so many more people. Okay? Now we're talking 3 in 54 people affected by these stereotypes. That is enormous, and you cannot deny it. What is the stereotype? Autism is the result of bad parenting. And this is not true. Neither is the stereotype autism is a disorder. What is autism? It's a genetic condition. Okay? And don't hold me to this, though, because not only is it only speculation, even by those with PhDs in medical science and all of that, if I find a proper source to back this up, I will link it when I find it. But it is believed that autism is a step forward in evolution. Can I confirm this? No. Can I back up the statement? Not yet, but if I find a reliable source to back it up, I will link it in the description. So, it can't really be the result of bad parenting if you're born with it. Before your parents even start parenting you, you're autistic. So, that debunks that instantly. This also debunks the idea that it's a disease. It's not a disease. Autism spectrum disorder is a spectrum, which is very different than any sort of disease, or it's considered a disability. I don't like that term. I prefer condition because it's more accurate. It's a spectrum, and what this means is chances are you'll never find two people who are autistic with the same exact signs. You could find someone who's brutally honest, has super sensitive hearing, super sensitivity to light, but someone that doesn't have problems in social life, and then someone who's the exact opposite. It's a spectrum. Plain and simple. Grant, of course, it's not a simple topic at all. It's still not very well understood. To this day, autism is still very much misunderstood and loaded with misconceptions, surrounded by it, filled with it. Just misconceptions about autism are everywhere. And honestly, I would say unless they are a credited organization like the CDC, or they have autism, they are autistic, the one other way I would say they have ethos, they are a credible source on such a condition, is if they are the parents of someone who is autistic. These are the three things I would say are reliable sources of information. The last stereotype I feel has to be covered is autistic people are intellectually disabled. And if you are medically, intellectually disabled, there is no hate on you for this at all. And I'm not trying to put you down in any way. I'm trying to correct the misconceptions around autism that are making issues that are not the proper issues be addressed. If you are intellectually disabled, okay, that's you. I'm not talking about you. I am talking about those on the spectrum so that they can get just treatment. I'm not trying to discriminate against those who truly are intellectually disabled in any way, but that is what the stereotype is. And the problem with this is it's not that yes, I say we because I'm autistic as well. It's not that those with autism have an inability to learn. You have to understand the difference between intellectually disabled and academically challenged is huge. if you are disabled from something, it means you can't do it. Like, if you are crippled, that's what they call it. Someone in a wheelchair, someone who can't walk. Then you are disabled to walk. And I am not trying to point any fingers at all. I'm trying to correct misconceptions to make the lives of those with autism more justly treated. So, no, we can learn. Autism doesn't mean you can't learn. It means you could very well learn in a different way. That is very possible. And to learn in a different way, nothing wrong with it. So, let me use an example from my own life here. So, I, in 9th grade, had this teacher, and she was a good teacher, okay? Her methods were sound. They had logic to them. But there's one thing she refused to do. If someone struggles to learn something, she doesn't take the time to explain it in a different way. The next teacher I had in 10th grade, if someone was like, and I was like this, I couldn't understand the lesson. Can you explain it another way? She did. And something I couldn't learn all 9th grade, I learned in 3 minutes from her. That's all autism does. It doesn't make you intellectually disabled. It makes you academically challenged. And this can mean a variety of things. But for me, personally, it meant if you don't learn something, you need it to be taught another way. That's just how it is. So I sort of covered all the biggest stereotypes I feel need to be addressed. Now I'm going to share with you some of my personal experience. And how can I confirm for a fact I'm a credible source on this? It's my own experience. Okay? That's my ethos. If it's my own personal experiences, the way I see it, how am I not credible? And these are some painful memories for me. Obviously, I'm not going to share with you the times I experienced where autism wasn't an issue and they were good times, because that true, genuine thing I'm trying to do is address the actual issues. So, I don't remember what grade I was in. Maybe first or second? No, wait. I think it was in like kindergarten. Yeah, no. There was never a time when I hadn't gotten to the point where it wasn't an issue. And I have been mistreated all my life because of autism. Teachers didn't understand me. I used to go to a public school. Very few of my teachers really got me at that school. My special education math teacher got me. A specific teacher's aide got me. My 5th grade teacher got me. To my knowledge, no one else understood me at that school. And I made some very odd friends because they were the only ones that didn't mind me being different. But I always felt like, I don't know, I was missing a piece of myself because no one understood me. Okay? I was a social person in a public school that next to no one would talk to or hang out with because they didn't get me. Because I was different and they didn't know why. I eventually grew afraid of people. I started to think I wasn't a social person. I would isolate myself. I would talk to very few people. And this didn't start getting better until like 5th grade. Up until 5th grade, I decided no one understood me. No one was willing to try with me, except for very few that didn't care. They didn't care or didn't see that I was different. To them, I was just me. Which, all the issues they had, all the strange things about them. At that school, they were the best people I knew. And then, of course, the teachers and teaching aide that got me. Maybe not even understood me. One of my teachers did because she had experienced autism. Not like she was autistic, but she'd been around those with autism before. And until 5th grade, until that teacher, the only place I was really understood was my math class, where the teacher was a special needs educator. Special needs can be almost anything. If you're dyslexic, if you're autistic, of course, if you have ADHD, you could be put in a special needs class. And oh God, I remember spending about 3 hours a week, I think, walking back and forth between classes at that school. And half of this was because when I went to my math class, I was on the other side of campus. And while that doesn't really matter so much, it's like at that school, that time from when I left my homeroom to when I got back to my homeroom was the best time I had at that school. And that is something I will always treasure. I will always treasure that in this time of great struggle, I had something positive at that place. Otherwise, the way people saw autism or just didn't get me made my experience there a living heck. Then I transferred schools into 6th grade. When I transferred schools, I went to a smaller school, a private school, middle school, of course. But at that school, everything was turned on its head. Every teacher I had at that school worked for me except my special needs math teacher. One of them was good, but the other not so much. But that was more, I think, her just not understanding how to teach special needs students very well. Anyways, when I got to this school, my life had turned around. It really had. My 6th grade teacher from that school, well, we're still friends to this day. I haven't heard from her in a while. I don't even know if the number I have for her is still correct. But that school, and I wish I could say what the name of the school was, but it unfortunately did get shut down. And saying what the school was, well, might give away location information, so I can't do that. There's also the safety of everyone else that went to that school potentially to think about. But as the year before it shut down, I had transferred to high school. I wish I could tell you where I go to high school. But again, location information, it's not safe. So I can't. But this school was amazing. It is amazing. I had maybe one or two actually bad teachers here. Just one. I only had one bad teacher at this school. The other teachers, either it was they worked for me or they didn't work for me. Most of them did work for me. And I cannot thank the staff of this school enough for what they have done. And this school is a special needs school. It's made for kids like me. Well, I'm not really a kid anymore, but people like me. So you see, my life really turned around. But I can't help but think about all those who are also autistic who didn't have as good of luck as me, who didn't get to go to the private or special needs schools I did, who are stuck in public schools getting alienated, dehumanized, discriminated against, started to suffer chronic depression, and in some cases even get to the point where they killed themselves. Any real issue can cause chronic depression and suicide. So this isn't something that would often cause death, would not often cause people to kill themselves, which is, talking about that one topic is something that makes me feel this is not suited for little kids and why this has to be 18 plus. I can't help but think about all those who have suffered all their lives because people didn't understand what ASD was. People didn't understand what you were. And to this day, I still see people online poking fun at autism. Like, okay, so I sort of gotten past this issue myself to a degree, but I'm only bringing it up because it's a good example. So, one day I was on Discord, and this guy was having trouble getting a bot to do what he wanted, so he ended up saying, "This bot is autistic." This hit me like a jackhammer. He clearly, well, there was one of two possibilities. I learned that he was just completely oblivious to what these stereotypes do. But this hit me like a jackhammer. And he either was clueless about what he said actually meant to someone on the spectrum, or he just didn't care. Which, again, I learned later he didn't realize. But, so even to this day, people make fun of autism on social media, and it is ridiculous. These stereotypes, jokes you poke fun at us with. When you say stuff like this, you are attacking millions of people. Millions. That comment hit me so hard, I could not look at that server for a week. So, it's still a very major issue, and someone has to do something about it. I don't care that I'm still small. I am dedicated to growing my channel to spread my message. I will spread my message, and I will not stop until my peers, my kind, those on the spectrum, are free of these horrible stereotypes that are making our lives living hell just because people don't get us. And I don't understand why people believe these things. Like, stereotypes are half-truths. They're not completely false. They started somewhere. But they're not fully true either, which automatically makes them wrong. Because if it's not fully true, it can do a lot of damage. without even being completely true. These stereotypes or misconceptions are, I don't even know what to call them, because they're not lies. They're not so much people trying to be jerks, necessarily. But they're a problem that needs to stop. And with the rapid rate at which autism is either growing or being discovered, we need to put our foot down, stomp it right down, and say, this needs to stop. So tell me, will you help me spread my message? Will you join me on this journey? Or will you just ignore it and hope it goes away? Or say it doesn't affect you, so it's not your problem? We are just like all of you. We are human beings with thoughts, feelings, emotions. This needs to be respected. And I will not stand for any more of this. It needs to stop. And it's not going to stop on its own. Someone must do something. And I will be that someone. Thank you for listening. I hope you can help me spread the word. And if you want to talk to me personally about what you can do, or how, or just like anything else you want to know, the channel has a Discord. You can find me through that. I will link that in the description below. But thank you all for listening. I know this is an hour video. And keep in mind, every video I upload, it takes me twice as long to record it and put it up as it does to just record it. Because I have to go through it, watch it myself, and check for anything that means I cannot upload. So keep that in mind. I am affected just as much by the length of the video. But this needed to be done. And next week's video will be a lot more happy. Next week's video will be back to gaming, but this had to be said.